Welcome to the Joao podcast. I'm Joe Vendramini from the University of Florida, and today our guest is Dr. Ky Pohler from Texas A&M University. Ky, thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Joe. I really appreciate it.
Ky, can you please give us a little background information about yourself?
Yeah, so I grew up in Shiner, Texas, which is about 2 hours here from College Station, and did an undergrad degree here at Texas A&M University, and then went and did a master's and PhD at University of Missouri. Was on faculty at University of Tennessee for 3.5 years, and then came back to A&M about 1.5 years ago, and I'm on faculty here. And currently work on factors of fertility, both on the female and male side of things, trying to look at not only the applied side and production-based aspects, but also some of the more basic mechanisms that might be involved as well.
And Ky, we have seen many times the bull fertility is something that is overlooked by producers. You know, we are really focused on the females, developing heifers, and cows, but sometimes it's hard for us, and many people don't have a plan, you know, for how to manage those bulls off season and how to make them a little more efficient. Can you please tell us what you think will be some good management practices to optimize that bull fertility?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the things, that I look at it in our own personal cow-calf operation, one of the things that we tend to forget about a lot of times is the male aspect of it, and how we care for, the bulls and how we handle them in the off season. I think that as we look at ways to increase efficiency as we move forward, now into 2020 and do better than we did last year, I think one of the ways to do that is really focus on the male side of things and put some emphasis into our bull programs. One of the big things that I really saw in 2019 that I think was an aspect that we need to pay close attention to in 2020, we saw a lot of bulls, and here in Texas, we're in a very similar climate to what you guys are, tropical, subtropical based environment. We saw a lot of bulls that passed breeding soundness exams early in the breeding season and went out to pasture. And we brought them back in. None of them were passing BSEs. And as I've talked to producers in our area here, we saw a lot of that happen this year. So I think that, as we think about in a situation that it seems that, we're getting hotter and hotter, or we're having more hot days than we've ever had, I think we really have to be careful in how we manage how many bulls we turn out, our bull power, but also make sure that, that they're maintaining their fertility throughout the breeding season. And so as we think about managing them in the off season, I think an important thing to keep in mind is we need to make sure we have good shade for those bulls. We need to make sure they stay on good plains nutrition, so that when we turn them out, they're ready to work. And sometimes getting a bull too fat and then turning him out and asking him to breed a bunch of cows, I also think is a challenge. So you gotta have nutrition sort of dialed in and right in the right location. But making sure that we're getting BSEs done, making sure those bulls are properly vaccinated, and of course passing all the breeding soundness exams, I think is critical, and something that doesn't cost a lot. Of breeding soundness exam was $50, but is definitely an investment that can save a lot of money down the road.
And Ky, you mentioned a point here about the shade and the heat that we are experiencing right now. So do you believe that we should have a different management if you have like a bull that is a Bos Taurus, English, or a continental, compared to some hybrid breeds like Brangos or Brayford or Beefmaster? Do you think they would behave differently in that weather?
Yeah, I think, obviously the Bos Indicus genetics and the composites that you talked about definitely have been shown to have higher heat tolerance when we look at them. And a lot of the big fertility studies that we've done a lot of them in South America and in Brazil, looking at some of this. And what we tend to find is that in the heat stress times a year, our Bos Indicus bulls are outperforming our Bos Taurus bulls in the same environment. And I think that makes sense. And, what I would encourage people to think about is, let's try to optimize the management to the most optimal situation that we can, with the best shade, et cetera, that we can, no matter what the breed is. But of course, we have to recognize that in a tropical and subtropical climate with Bos Taurus bulls, we really have to focus on making sure that those bulls have proper shade and can cool themselves in a way, because in the situation I was talking about this last year with the number of bulls that we saw not pass BSEs, those were all in Bos Taurus bulls. where we were trying to make composite animals using Bos taurus, Bos indicus crosses. And, we saw 50% of our bulls not pass their second BSE after they came out of the breeding season.
Yeah, and Ky, do you think there may be something to consider if you have those Bos taurus bulls, just trying to get those breed soundness tests a little later in the season instead of having, earlier when we still have a lot of hot climate and probably heat stress?
Yeah, for sure. And I think so there's two things that sort of go along with it. I think that, optimizing when you're doing your BSCs so that you make sure that the bulls are ready to perform either at the beginning of the breeding season or during the breeding season. And, we get the question all the time, well, how do you evaluate bull fertility as you're going through a breeding season? And that's a really tough question because it's difficult to measure field fertility in a bull, right? But one thing that you can do is you can go in and do pregnancy checks on your cows at some point to make sure that you are achieving some level of pregnancies moving forward in your herd. One of the things that I see happen is people turn out bulls, for example, and never do a pregnancy check or do one pregnancy check and then figure out that the 3 bulls they turned out, they initially passed their BSEs, but they ended up having bad fertility. Well, if you do a middle of the breeding season pregnancy check or whatever you can do, even if it's not on all the animals, even if you can get a subset sampling, it at least will tell you and make you feel more confident about the results that you're seeing out of your bulls.
And switching gears a little bit, we are talking about the bull power, and I'm thinking, if you think about it, right, AI also would be something that will be very efficient for you in order for you to decrease the number of bulls that you need and have options, but we have seen that AI, it's very hard to take off, and convince people to go through the AI program, not primarily for many reasons, labor or facilities or other reasons. So would you have any thoughts about how we're going to optimize this AI program and incorporate that in the commercial operation?
Yeah, so I think, and you made a lot of great points there. I think artificial insemination, as a technology, has been around for a long time, right? And there's a lot of changes to these programs. I think a lot has happened to simplify these programs throughout the years. One of the big opportunities that I see with current reproductive technologies and AI is the situation that we move to now, where we're breeding a lot of animals at a given time, fixed time artificial insemination. And so, the ability to go into a herd of postpartum cows, postpartum Bos indicus cows, that have a very high percentage of them that aren't cycling to start the breeding season, to go in and to be able to synchronize them and do an artificial insemination, where you capitalize on the highest quality genetics that you can possibly buy in the breed through buying AI sires, etc., and getting as many animals as you can bred on day one of the breeding season is huge. But I think the bigger thing, and one of the things that I like to talk about in AI, is realistic expectations. So I think that we all, when we start an AI program, to some degree, we have unrealistic expectations. We believe that we're going to get 80% of the cows pregnant, everything's going to be perfect, we're not going to have any problems. And I think that we have to have more realistic expectations in what we're trying to achieve from AI. And once you combine that together with all the other advantages, I think that's when we're going to start to see it move forward. One of the big things that I think that we miss out on opportunities is estrus synchronization without AI, estrus synchronization and using natural service sires. So the whole idea is to move the cow herd forward and to tighten them up in regards to estrus synchronization in your calving windows. To use estrus synchronization and even use natural service sires is better than not using estrus synchronization at all. So I think that we need to think about implementing it in a stepwise fashion where we use estrus synchronization and maybe natural service, and then estrus synchronization maybe with a little AI mixed in before you just move all the way to AI. I think sometimes we bite off a little bit more than we can chew, and we may not have realistic expectations in the end when we're thinking about what our success and failures are to reproductive technology. And that's not just AI, that's all reproductive technologies.
And Ky, among the options that we would have with AI, something that is, in my opinion, very appealing, but is still controversial, is the use of sex semen, right? And that would really change the approach, because if you can have a cow herd that you can have, at least 80% male calves, and that would really bump up your income. So that probably would justify a lot more things that we could do. So do you have any thoughts on this approach?
Yeah, so sex semen has obviously revolutionized the dairy industry, right? Changed the way that dairies operate, and it's very uncommon to go to a dairy today where sex semen's not used. And I think that the technology for sex semen has increased a lot. So we've seen higher pregnancy rates than we've ever seen coming out of sex semen. Cliff Lamb and I just finished a big study here at Texas A&M with heifers, looking at sex semen with a pre-synchronization. It saw pregnancy rates in the mid 40% to time AI with sex semen. So I think those are really beneficial things. And I think as a commercial cow-calf producer, when we sit down and we look at what's important to us, so where does my money really come from? And you got to sort of look at the balance between sort of what you're getting for your male calves versus your female calves. And I think one thing that we all tend to fall into is we tend to look to see what our neighbor's doing, right? So if our neighbor is doing one thing, maybe we try to do the same thing because maybe it seems to be working for them. But I think that as you think about a reproductive technology program and a reproductive management program, you need to pick something that works well for your operation. Okay, so how you manage your bulls might work for you, but it might not work for the person next to you. It's the same thing with AI and sex semen. So in your situation, if you have a real market advantage for male calves compared to your female calves, and you can generate extra revenue, you can stand to take that little higher or that little lower pregnancy rate to the artificial insemination. So it all just depends. Really powerful technology that has, I think we'll see it continue to get better over time. With the protocols and stuff that are coming out, but it's never going to be at the same rate of what we see in natural service or what we see in conventional AI. And I think that just comes down to those realistic expectations of what you can gain from your program and what that is.
Ky, we are going towards the end of our conversation here. Before I finish, I'd like to ask you if you have any hobbies that you like to do on your spare time, your free time.
Yeah, since I have so much free time, I like to, I definitely like to fish. And since I've been fishing with you before, I know that I'm a better fisherman than you. So that's always good. But yeah, I enjoy fishing and playing a little golf with my brother as well when I have time.
Yeah, those are all good things. So I have to admit that I'm not a really good fisherman, but at least I go for the ride, right?
Yeah.
a good partner, but not a good fisherman. Ky, I'd like to thank you very much for participating in the podcast today. And I am Joe Vendramini.
Joe what?